She let herself feel it without trying to name it first. That was the difference this time. No analysis, no quiet warnings in her head, no internal voice telling her to slow down or be careful. She simply allowed the feeling to exist, raw and unfiltered, even though it unsettled her. It wasn't overwhelming. It was honest. And honesty had a weight she wasn't used to carrying without resistance. For so long, she had treated feelings like obstacles, things to manage, minimize, or redirect. She believed control meant distance, that staying composed required keeping emotions at arm's length. But this feeling didn't respond to distance. The more she ignored it, the more it waited, patient and persistent, until she finally understood that fighting it was costing her more than feeling it ever could. When she stopped pushing it away, she noticed how natural it felt. Not dramatic, not reckless, just present. It showed up in small moments, in quiet pauses, in the way her thoughts slowed instead of racing ahead. She realized how much energy she had spent avoiding this exact state, being aware of herself without judgment. There was fear in letting herself feel it. Not fear of the emotion itself, but fear of what it might reveal. Feelings have a way of uncovering truths you didn't plan to face. They remind you of what you want, what you miss, what you've been denying, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that kind of clarity. Still, she stayed with it. She noticed how the feeling didn't demand action. It didn't push her toward decisions or consequences. It simply asked for space. Space to be acknowledged, space to exist without being labeled as wrong or inconvenient. And in giving it that space, she felt something unexpected relief, as if she had finally stopped holding something back that was never meant to be contained. The more she allowed herself to feel, the more grounded she became. She felt present in her body, in her thoughts, in the moment itself. There was no rush to understand where it came from or where it might lead. She realized that not every feeling needs direction. Some just need permission. She reflected on how often she had silenced herself in the past, how quickly she dismissed emotions that didn't fit her plans or her sense of control. She had mistaken restraint for strength, believing that maturity meant emotional distance. But this experience showed her something different. Strength could also mean staying open, even when it felt uncomfortable. Letting herself feel, it didn't change her life overnight. It didn't rewrite her story or force her into new choices. What it changed was subtler, but deeper. It changed how she listened to herself, how she trusted her own emotional signals instead of immediately questioning them. That trust felt unfamiliar, but necessary. There were moments when the feeling intensified, when she became acutely aware of how alive it made her feel. Not excited, not anxious. Alive. As if she had reconnected with a part of herself she had kept quiet for too long. And in those moments, she understood why the feeling had stayed, why it had waited for her to be ready. She didn't cling to it. She didn't try to make it permanent. She simply let it move through her at its own pace. And as it did, it softened. Not because it lost meaning, but because it no longer had to fight for attention. It had been heard. She realized then that allowing yourself to feel isn't about losing control. It's about choosing awareness over avoidance. It's about trusting that you can experience something deeply without being consumed by it. That realization stayed with her long after the feeling itself had quieted. When it finally settled, she didn't feel empty. She felt clear, calm, more connected to herself than she had been in a long time. She understood that feelings don't weaken you when you face them honestly. They inform you. They remind you of who you are beneath habits, roles, and expectations. She let herself feel it. Not because it was easy, but because she was tired of pretending she didn't. And in that quiet decision, she found something she hadn't been searching for, but deeply needed permission to be fully present in her own experience, without fear, without apology. She knew she would carry this lesson forward. Not the feeling itself, but what it taught her. That ignoring emotions doesn't make them disappear. That acknowledging them doesn't mean acting on them, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply allow yourself to feel what's already there.